Good morning and welcome to Ohio Stadium, home of the Ohio State Buckeyes and the site of today's matchup between the number one Ohio State Buckeyes and the not number one Penn State Nittany Lions, the at one point number one, no longer number one Penn State Nittany Lions. I'm Tom Orr, joined by Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, this is a game that at the start of the season, even over the summer, we looked at this and went, man, oh man, I cannot wait. This is going to be in a series that has been filled with classic matchups. Great games coming into the last minute, always significant Big Ten championship implications. This might be one of the best of all time. I mean, it still could be, technically.
Yeah.
The game hasn't happened yet. It still could be, but
if that happens,
then then this really does become a legendary game in the series.
We've seen some amazing performances down on the field, late in moments. JT Barrett comes to mind. JT Tuimoloau comes to mind. Any other JTs?
I thought you were going to say your photo of Isaiah Prince. I mean, great moments in the series. Yeah,
that just three of them. But there, as Ryan Day keeps saying, this is still a talented Penn State team, and I think that's the one thing that is not going to be lost on this Ohio State football team, because they played these guys the last, like everybody on this team that played last year played these guys, and they remember being down 10-0 and having to fight and claw back and stealing a win there in Happy Valley. So I don't think there's going to be any kind of overlooking. Like, you're just going to look at the record and be like, no.
Yeah. Well, I think this is something where it's easier for fans to do that and kind of go, well, I mean, UCLA, Northwestern, come on. And for the players, I think the series history certainly is one thing that factors into that. And like I said, there have been some great games. We went through year by year on one of the preview shows this week, and there has not been a game decided by more than 2 touchdowns since 2015 in this series. So this is a series that is always close one way or another. That's one factor that may make sure Ohio State's focused. The other factor is going to be sitting in a booth down that way, about 150 feet or so in a few hours. And that man's name is Jim Knowles. And that has been, I think, if this was a game between 2 top 5 teams and you had people really doing wall-to-wall coverage all week, that would be something you would be so tired of hearing about. And people are probably somewhat tired of hearing about it. But just the way Ryan Day answered the question about Jim Knowles, he was very diplomatic. But also, you had a pretty good sense for where he stood and the fact that he wouldn't mind making a little bit of a statement today if the opportunity presented itself.
Ryan Day did at the end when he was asked about his relationship with Jim Knowles and how all that happened, how it all went down. And so, it's a business, but, you're still human, so it's hard not to take personally. Like, that's where you're starting to let your guard down. Like, yeah, I'm kind of ticked off about it. And now, Tom, the last time he was ticked off about it, an opposing coach, way back when in 2019 with Mike Loxley, perhaps spilling the beans on a Chase Young thing that shouldn't have happened. Ohio State went out and scored 73 points.
At an onside kick when they were up by about 30.
I'm not saying we're going to see just constant tempo from Ohio State so they can hit 70 points on this, but I do think there's some level of, like, I'd like to pay somebody back here, but not to lose sight of the overall purpose of this game, which is to get a win, get out healthy, move on to the next, get ready for the playoffs, get ready for Michigan. But also, hey, you know what? We've got a young quarterback that needs to work against talented defense. So if things should happen.
Well, yeah, Ryan Day compared it to the end of a relationship, and he said relationship, and I think everyone kind of filled in romantic relationship, but any kind of interpersonal relationship. In a long-term romantic relationship, like, there is the idea, like, you want to win the breakup. You want to be the one who's 6 months, a year later, you see each other, and one of you's in really good shape, and the other one's kind of like still wearing sweatpants, and it's like, you want to win the breakup. Ryan Day pretty clearly. I mean, we said number one versus number not appearing in your picture at the top of the show. Ryan Day is pretty clearly winning the breakup right now. So, and I think Ryan Day also understands there are bigger picture things at hand here Ryan Day, I'm sure, would love to hang 70 points on Jim Knowles. I'm sure he'd love to hang 70 points on Michigan. If Ryan Day beats Penn State and beats Michigan, Ryan Day is going to be in the Big Ten championship game and have a chance to be the number one seed in the college football playoff. That's really the biggest goal right now. And I think he's kind of got that in mind. Ed Rogers says, isn't Knowles still putting in his 3-year plan at Penn State? And I think absolutely that's the case. You're seeing, yes, the results have been bad this year. Part of that is to do with the injury to Tony Rojas, who's the linebacker, who they really just haven't been able to replace. And that's shown up a lot in why are they getting run on the way they're getting run on. That's a big piece of why. But also the Jim Knowles roadmap has been very consistent at Oklahoma State, at Ohio State. It's been the same thing. Year 1, it's going to take a while to get set up. Year 2, okay, you're better. Year 3, you are world killers. I think the issue that Penn State has this year is this was the natty or bust year for Penn State. And we talked about that with Ohio State last year a bunch. And for Michigan, that was 2 years ago. And Michigan got the natty, and Ohio State got the natty, and Penn State got the bust. And you didn't have the luxury of a year to learn and kind of, have a little bit of a rebuilding year, maybe. You didn't have that luxury. And so when you had exactly the type of Jim Knowles first year you sometimes see where you have the other kind of bust, you have the bust.
Well, I think the Jim Knowles first year defense at Penn State is much better than the Jim Knowles first year defense at Ohio State. He's learned from that. The numbers aren't all that different than from last year, in terms of yards per play, yards per carry, things like that. But there are just still some things that it's not as dominating a defense as last year, as you see UCLA scoring 42 points or whatever. That's all you need to know about the capabilities and the fractures of the defense that they have. So, when they come in here to Columbus, I think the foundation that Jim Knowles had carrying over from last year is better than the foundation maybe than from when he started here, because it was just you're going from a bad defense in 2021 to trying to do something with it. And they improved, but you're still giving up 17, 18, 19 points per game in that first year. The big plays that we talked about, so many big plays. That's not as much a part of this Penn State defense as it was the Ohio State defense, thankfully for Penn State. But you can see they're still searching for things, and they're still trying to find the right mixtures. And the inability still to force punts in the fourth quarter. And it used to be a meme, and now it's just become a giant meme. It has been an alarming thing. And I had the stat a while back, a week or so ago, and I don't remember what it was. But I think maybe the last time they forced a fourth quarter punt was not even Oregon, maybe before Oregon in terms of now, but there are also fourth down stops. Mm-hmm. There were things of that, missed field goals, things like that. So it's not like they're scoring every time in the fourth quarter, but the inability to force punts in the fourth quarter has been a remarkable thing that has followed Jim Knowles the last year.
Yeah, and some of that, I think, has to do with the offense and the offense's inability to stay on the field and the defense being asked to do a lot. Last year against Michigan, the defense, it was really all put on the defense. Defense gave up really 3 points for the majority of that game. And, the first touchdown was a 6-yard drive. Yeah. And they gave up 1 field goal drive, and then they gave up one at the very end of the game. If your defense gives up functionally 3 points for the majority of the game and 6 points for the whole game, that's a game you should win. That's not really on Jim Knowles, even if you do have the fourth quarter punt issues or punt forcing issues. It is let's see. John says Tempo would take advantage of the delay in getting a defensive call in, which Jim has a problem with.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that today?
No, exactly. And I do. We've seen a little bit of tempo from Ohio State when the situation calls for it. I think there will be situations that do call for it here. And Ryan Day knows exactly how much tempo is going to affect a Jim Knowles defense. So how much we see of it, we'll see. But he understands tempo generally gives everybody trouble. Mm-hmm. So, Jim Knowles was no different. But, you've got the 15-second clock. Some people wait until after the clock and then you break your huddle.
Right.
And then you go, because then you can't change anything from the mics.
Yes.
So there's differing thoughts in terms of like, that's why you change it up. You change speeds, Brian Day always says, just like a pitcher, you're changing speeds. But there's also an advantage to, and I think we've seen it maybe against Oklahoma and Brent Venables. You're not even breaking the huddle until there's 15 seconds left on the play clock, because that's when the communication stops. And then you go and do your thing.
Yeah. And I think if you can give Penn State's defenders less time to process things, that's probably going to be to your advantage.
But you can do that two different ways.
You can do that two different ways, correct? Because Brian Day, Ohio State is, I think, 136th in the nation in tempo, which is crazy for an offensive coach like Brian Day, who was complaining all last year, oh, we don't get enough plays. Well, turns out that was intentional, because they are trying to basically do load management for these guys over the course of what could be a long season. So maybe you run the play clock down, but then you break the huddle after the radio communication shuts off and hustle the line. And then, the Penn State defenders have talked about the fact that this is a complicated defense where there's a lot for them to figure out. And when you see bust, it's because you have confusion. You have, I have a decision tree of 4 to 6 things I could be doing on this play, depending on all the different things. If you don't give them time to process that, that's where you potentially do create some big plays. This is, we'll talk about another Ohio State coordinator, a current Ohio State coordinator, and rumors involving other schools. Todd says, salute from France. Really enjoy your podcast. And Ohio State keep Hartline with all those make-your program opportunities. So I think there's 2 pieces of this. One is the question he asked, and I'll get to that in a minute. One is the subtext of this question, not necessarily from Todd's question, but from broadly across the internet. The narrative around Brian Hartline has been, Penn State College last weekend, he wasn't. Like, I promise you, no, he wasn't. If random dude 69 on Twitter is saying Brian Hartline was in State College, and all the reputable Penn State reporters, like the biggest, most well-connected Penn State reporters and Ohio State reporters, are all telling you, no, he wasn't. It doesn't make any sense. That's not how any of this works. He wasn't in State College last weekend. So we're just going to get that out of the way up front. Now, how does Ohio State keep him? Can Ohio State keep him with all these major program opportunities? I don't know. I mean, we'll see what the opportunities are. I saw somewhere where he was the second leading candidate in terms of betting odds to take over Penn State. Walk me through the scenario where you're Penn State and you're, like, no disrespect to Brian Hartline, who is phenomenal at what he does, but right now his skill set is incredible recruiter, incredible position coach. So far, so good with the offensive coordinator thing, but it's been 7 games. The head coach, he's running the head coach's offense. This is not a Brian Hartline offense. The skill sets that he's shown and truly excels at, that's not, you're running a $150 million business. That's a different skill set. I think there's probably some intermediate steps between here and he is immediately a successful head coach at Penn State, where the expectation is 10-2 isn't good enough. 10-2 just got the last guy fired. So what makes you think that with his existing skill sets that we've seen, that you are willing to put trust your entire program to him immediately? He's going to be immediately successful because there's no room for error.
Well, and these betting odds, as we talked about in the past, where it's just designed for you to bet that money,
Yes.
So I don't think he is the second most likely candidate, but there is a desire to go get Ryan Day, coordinator, Dan Lanning, coordinator, Kirby Smart, coordinator. I mentioned Brent Venables, not a great example, but guys that have not been head coaches before, because a lot of these head coaches that you go and get, Jimbo Fisher, Brian Kelly, James Franklin, don't necessarily work out. There is no formula, necessarily for this. You got to find. It's such a guessing game. It's like first round NFL quarterbacks, where it's like, we've done a lot of study on this,
right,
and we're going to maybe bat 400 on it. In terms of, can Ohio State keep him? Here's the thing: it's not just about Penn State, or it's all of the jobs that open up after the guy that takes Penn State.
Right.
Like, what job does he open up?
Mm-hmm.
And is that something that Brian Hartline would be interested in? Is that something that, Matt Patricia or Keenan Bailey or like Tim Walton? Like, I don't see anybody else necessarily vying for a head coaching position right now. You're not hearing about that. Certainly, people have to move up on the ladder, but that's also a thing. Well, Ryan Day, and I wrote about it this week. He talked about it on Tuesday. You try to build a program that nobody wants to leave, and so you that's players, that's coaches. Sometimes coaches feel like, well, I just need to move on. Like a Tony Alford, that situation. I need to, if I'm going to be a coordinator, if I'm going to call plays like Keenan Bailey, I'm probably going to have to move on until Brian Hartline. So like, there's still some moving parts, and you try to keep everybody happy. And Keenan Bailey has been here longer than Ryan Day, but at some point, coaches move on. I asked Ryan Day, can you expect to keep your coordinators year after year? And he said, I'd like to think so. I'd like to hope so. And it's like, well, that's not a yes.
Right. And if Brian Hartline does take a job, let's say Scott Satterfield from Cincinnati takes some open job. And
Louisville, because Jeff Brom is the number one option for Penn State.
Jeff Brom moves to Penn State.
Hartline to Louisville.
I was going to say, I don't think Louisville is going to bring back Scott Satterfield, but Hartline goes to Louisville, for example. Keenan Bailey stepping in as the new offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach at Ohio State, in terms of the recruiting, in terms of the coaching, I would have, replacing Brian Hartline at Ohio State, whenever that happens, if and when that happens, that is never going to be easy. Of anyone on the planet Earth, I think Keenan Bailey is as well positioned to do as good of a job at that as almost anyone. So, I think that's one thing. And in terms of high-profile teams losing coordinators, if I'm looking at it, a coordinator and saying, high-profile offense, like Oregon's Will Stein has been actually calling the plays since 2023. He's also on the side of the ball that is not the head coach's side of the ball. So this is really a Will Stein offense. He's been in charge. He's been running that stuff for a couple more years. Also a good recruiter, also a great offensive mind. So, I think he would be someone that would be more likely to be slightly higher on some of these pecking orders in terms of some of the bigger jobs than Hartline, just purely because of the experience at the sort of intermediate level of the sport. Super chat from Ryan Dawes. He wants to know, will this be the game a defensive tackle has an epic game rather than defensive end, given the name for Penn State to lean on Kaytron Allen?
I think you have had some good games from the defensive tackles, but it's hard for them to have an epic game when they're playing 30 snaps because they're rotating in, and everybody else Caden McDonald is just not necessarily just a block occupier. Like, he's taking on two guys, and then the linebackers are clean, so they make plays. But I think when you see Caden McDonald get in there for a tackle for loss or two, or we were seeing more from Tywan Malone, seeing more from Edric Houston, graded out a champion in the last game. I don't know that you're going to see one guy just 4 tackles for loss dominate like that. But if it did happen, I would say Caden McDonald would be that guy. It is key clearly to stop Kaytron Allen. You stop Kaytron Allen, I don't. Good luck scoring it 17 points to win this game or whatever. I don't know. Is Caden McDonald would be the most likely guy at some point, though. I do expect Edric Houston to have a noticeable game where even the people who just watch the ball notice it.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said. If they move Caden Curry inside and line him up as zero tech like they did against Washington, does that count? He's lined up directly over the center. You don't get more no's than that. Yeah. But
he's been impactful at that. He leads the Big Ten in tackles for loss, leads the Big Ten in sacks per game. And so there you go. Yes, the Caden Curry, who I have bold predictions of 3 impact plays this week.
Tony, as always, sort of cheating the system, but we allow it because we need to get the system, we need to get the show done. Ed Rogers wants to know, why did the experts have Penn State so highly over? So I think there's a combination of things, and I'm going to lean on, and I meant to go back and look at who this was, and I once again forgot to do it. So congratulations to me, great job on life. Someone on our board over the summer was saying, why does everyone think Penn State's going to be so good? And listed, boom, 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 boom. Here's the question, why? And it's kind of like, yep. Oh, congratulations, all of that turned out to be true. And this has always obviously been a worse season than even that was. That was sort of like why do you think they're not going to go 9-3 or 8-4? Well, now they're 3-4, and they have Ohio State and Penn State on deck, so they could very well be 3-6 shortly. So it's gone worse than expected. The worst than expected is you lose Drew Allar, you lose Tony Rojas. That stuff. That's what turns a 5-2 Penn State team coming in here into a 3-4 Penn State team coming in here. But you have a team that has not recruited at the elite level of the sport. This is not a program that's bringing in top 5 recruiting classes every year. It's a program that's bringing in top 10, top 12, recruiting very well in the sport, but not, why did they come up this short against Ohio State every year? It's because Ohio State has players that are this much better and a head coach that's this much better at managing tight situations. So a lot of it is just sort of the talent thing. We talked about the Jim Knowles first year thing where that's fine. In a normal year, that's fine if your defense is just, okay, but not amazing. This year, the offense hasn't been great. Nick Singleton has taken a huge step back. The passing game hasn't been, losing Tyler Warren obviously took a lot away from this team, and they don't have the guy who's stepping in and just filling his shoes. It's like, you look at the Ohio State wide receiver room, and it's just one to another, and it's like, how can they possibly replace Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson? It's like, well, there's a guy named Marvin Harrison and Jackson Smith and Jigba. How can they possibly replace Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison? Well, there's a guy named Emeka Ibuka and Carnell Tate, and then there's a Jeremiah Smith, and then and it just kind of goes on and on and on. How does Penn State replace a Tyler Warren? There's a question mark at the end of that, and there's not been an answer yet, and that's just a function of Ohio State's a little bit deeper, so it's a little bit easier for Ohio State to replace these guys, and the talent level at Ohio State just a little bit better. And Jim Knowles is, I have said this 1,000 times and I said it again, Jim Knowles is a great defensive coordinator. But you know what year one is. And Penn State replaced Tom Allen with Jim Knowles year one. Ohio State replaced Jim Knowles with Matt Patricia, who has been better than Jim Knowles. So some of it's assistant coach hires too.
Why is Penn State so overrated? Tom, you spelled it out greatly. I would say lazy narratives. Would Penn State have been the Big Ten overwhelming Big Ten favorite or national title favorite if Michigan and Ohio State hadn't won a national title the last 2 years? Or would they just be a number 7 team in the nation?
It's a fair question. Yeah.
Like they never had an impact quarterback. Drew Allar, and again, the NFL people that love him, it's like, why? For what?
Yeah.
Because of what he could be. It's like, look at what he is. Does not scare anybody. The receivers, and you lose Tyler. When Tyler Warren is also a backfield ball carrier, it's like that tells you all you need to know about the level of offense that you'll have once he's gone. You take the ball out of your quarterback's hands so often to give it to your tight end. And as I always say, when your tight end is your best offensive option, you're very limited in what you can do. So I just think if Ohio State and Michigan hadn't done it, then nobody would have been talking about Penn State in any kind of way. Then it's just one of the things that has annoyed me this year because I called it out immediately, and I can't just continue to pat myself on the back because I'm not the only one. But I think do better is what I would tell all of the people involved in
everyone who's not me.
Right? Yes.
Pat myself on the back, but
do better, everybody else.
Better. Yeah.
I hope I can just do as well as I did this year.
Mike Reno super chat says, I'm not sure if I'm who you were referring to, but I repeatedly pointed out on the board that Penn State wide receivers had 3 total receptions against Ohio State and Notre Dame combined, less than Akron. That's not a wide receiver issue. That was an offensive coordinator and quarterback issue. And that's absolutely fair. I think the question with Drew Allar was always there's elements there of a big time quarterback. He's got arm strength. He's got some mobility. He can make the Will Howard type plays. He can make the Will Howard type throws. And you saw what Will Howard did once he had Ryan Day's coaching and Chip Kelly's offense and Ohio State's wide receivers and Ohio State's running backs and all that kind of stuff last year. The question was, can Drew Allar take that next step? And as Tony said earlier, the NFL has spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars after careful study, and this is literally all these people do when they are the absolute top of their business. They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on oops all Rick Myrer, oops all Mitch Trubisky. Oops, I mean, like you can go through the top 5 NFL draft picks of Daniel Jones. Like everyone, when the Giants drafted Daniel Jones, everyone went, "The guy from Duke, really? Like, are you sure?" And it was like, well, I mean, these are people who spend their whole lives working to get to the point where they can be in a position to make that decision. They must know what they're talking about. No, they don't. As it turns out, no. So there's so many different factors that go into it. It's just it's a little bit of a guessing game still. And I know everyone wants to pretend it's a science, but if it was a science, you would not have the hit rate that you do. Right. You'd have better, So it's a difficult thing to sort of project. And you would sort of project, hey, there's growth here, there's better development here, and you really didn't see it. And the offensive coordinator piece of this with Kotelnicki, very creative offensive play caller, but he's maybe more of an offensive play caller that works at a place like Kansas, where it's like, we're going to do this with duct tape and baling wire. Where Jim Knowles or Oklahoma State was phenomenal at Oklahoma State, because it was like, well, we've got Colin Simmons. He's a guy who, it's like the entire Moneyball movie. Like, okay, we've got Colin Simmons. His weakness is he's the size of an actual normal human being. What can he do? He can have 21 sacks or whatever it was. It's you can sort of make it happen when you're working with the elements that a Penn State is. You don't necessarily need to be super cute and creative. Sometimes you got to be able to just sort of like scheme stuff up within a system, and it's a little bit of like, look how creative we can be, look how much different stuff we can do, rather than just doing it.
What's the point of it?
Right. Yeah.
If you're just we're trying to mess up the eyes and fool this defense. It's like, well, I mean, this is the Big Ten. It's not necessarily the Big 12 where defenders' eyes can get lost going all over the place. You got some more disciplined teams, I think, and talented teams in the Big Ten. But I get annoyed by Kotelnicki as well.
Mm-hmm. Mike Farino says Jones might be the MVP this year. Don't talk bad about Danny Dimes. He's in what, Indianapolis this
I think
year? So. Yeah, it's it will surprise you to learn that my interest and level of following the NFL is slightly less than 0.
The point is, if that was a good pick for the Giants, he'd still be a Giant,
and the GM would still be the GM. Right. The coach would still be the coach. Yes. So it says, screw ESPN and YouTube TV. They can't take Tom and Tony away. No.
Yeah,
don't challenge him. Yes. Don't challenge him.
Don't poke the bear.
Going through some of the comments here. Bill McMillan says, did Coach Day use AI to write a note to Terry Smith, a nice man, ambassador of all that is good in college football, about the final score? That way he can just hit send when the clock hits 0. Is that like the old Bill Snyder, like the handwritten notes in the purple ink? Like, yeah, it's Terry Smith, for those who don't know, he's the interim head coach of Penn State right now. He was a wide receiver at Penn State in the late 80s, early 90s. So he was in that like narrow window between, I think it was 87 and 91. So he was in that window between when they won the 86 national championship and before when they joined the Big Ten. So he was kind of in that like weird, the weird in between period there for them. But he's been on staff at Penn State since James Franklin was here. It might have even predated James Franklin. I think he's been here since 2014 or 13, something like that.
And he was the Gateway High School football coach for a long time. Yeah, probably sent some players to Ohio State back in the day.
Yeah,
maybe Corey Brown.
Pitt Brown, maybe. Yeah, but yeah, he is a Penn State, not quite lifer, but pretty close to lifer, and so he is the guy who they turn to where he is not, if James Franklin gets a job at fill in the blank school, UCLA, Florida, Virginia Tech, whatever, I would guess there are a number of Penn State assistants who will go with James Franklin to whatever that, because they're James Franklin guys. Terry Smith is a Penn State guy. Right? Terry Smith's loyalty is to Penn State. He is the real picture of the loyal soldier. It kind of fits the model of the interim head coach guy. Now I'm blanking on who was the name of it. Like Florida's interim coach is a guy like that.
Billy Gonzalez.
Yeah, Billy Gonzalez. Florida State, Odell Haggins at Florida State, when I think that was after they fired Jimbo, who's just the guy who's there forever. He was the guy who filled in as the interim coach. That's kind of who you have, the guy who's like really just loyal to the program. Probably not going to be the head coach after this. A little bit of a Luke Fickell story in 2011, where you needed a guy to kind of fill in for the year. You kind of had a sense that Urban Meyer might be the long-term solution, but you needed a guy to fill in for the year, and Luke Fickell was like the guy who really fit that model.
It was either going to be Luke Fickell or JR, who's always around the Woody and
yeah,
hanging out, walking around.
Yeah. Super chat from Mike Farino. If Kaytron is contained, a difficult task to be sure. Does Penn State cross the 50? I mean, what is contained? What does contained mean? I mean, they can cross the 50 if he's running for 3 yards a carry, which would be if they keep Kaytron Allen to 3 yards a carry, your chance of hitting your shutout dribble prediction increase significantly. You could, they can hit something. I mean, Terry Smith has talked about the fact that they want to take shots downfield today. You take shots downfield, maybe you complete them, maybe get a pass interference call. You can move the ball a little bit. You only need to hit one, and
2 years, I think they've held Kaytron Allen to about 2 yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
So you do that again. I don't think you keep anybody from hitting the 50 just because there could be a 12-yard punt somewhere in there. There could be like any number of reasons that will allow somebody to cross the 50 or start the ball with the ball, start the ball on the other side of the 50. But in terms of like, if they contain Kaytron Allen to 2 yards carry, again, it's going to have to be a big play, a one-off, a fluke, I think, for them to score more than once and maybe even once.
Tyler says, "Good morning to Buckeye Nation. With your, if you're a Penn State fan or Michigan fan wanting to see an upset, you're going to be disappointed today. Do Michigan fans want to see an upset today, or do Michigan fans want Ohio State to roll in there at number one and then them to be the one that says Ohio State could lose this game and they could lose to Michigan and they're still making the college football playoff? So if I'm a Michigan fan, I'm not rooting for Ohio State today in the way that Ohio State fans aren't rooting for Michigan, but Michigan wants Ohio State to roll in there at number one and then once again be the one that ruined the
and perhaps also knock them out of the Big Ten championship game. So it's all of the fun things that rivalry brings.
And I did a show earlier this week, if you're wondering about the Big Ten tiebreakers. I tried to go through and break this all down. You can find that on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning feed or on our YouTube channel, breaking down, okay, like there is a scenario where Ohio State and Michigan could play in the Big Ten championship game, like an entirely reasonable scenario where I'm now forgetting what it was, but Michigan had to beat Ohio State. Indiana had to lose to someone, Penn State next week, whatever it is. And then Oregon had to lose one game. Those are all entirely reasonable things. And then you could have Ohio State and Michigan 2 weeks in a row. You want to watch, some people want to watch the world burn. That would be a real want to watch the world burn scenario there. Ed says, perfect day to throw for 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. I'm sure Ryan Day thinks so. The weather is great. It is a perfect fall football Saturday. It's going to be in the 50s, not a lot of wind, sunny, clear, great day. Weather will not be a factor in this. Penn State's defense is not bad. This is not a defense where I would expect Ohio State to just light them up. There's still plenty of talent on this Penn State defense. Look at Zane Durant, the defensive tackle. Look at Dennis Sutton, the defensive end. Look at A.J. Harris, who's a corner that Ohio State wanted very badly in recruiting several years ago. He went to Georgia and then transferred to Penn State. Zakee Wheatley, the safety. There are holes on that defense, but it's not a black hole. The linebacker position is a big red flag to me right now. And, safeties other than Zakee Wheatley, I think are a little bit of a concern to me right now. But there are certainly players on that Penn State defense where you're not going to just light this team up.
I am interested to see if Ohio State can run the ball as well as Iowa has and well as a couple of the other teams have. The success that they had against Penn State would lend you to believe that Ohio State could have that same success. But right now, I think the yardage total has gone down every week since maybe Grambling. So eventually they're going to hit the negative and then maybe start going back up. But we always talk about the RPO as part of the passing yards. The RPO is also rushing. So how bad is it? They're still picking up the 3rd and short. So I guess like on 3rd and 3 this year or lower, they're averaging like 4.3 yards per carry. Yeah. So Ryan Day is going to continue to take that.
Right. We have been around Ryan Day enough over the years to know when Ryan Day is concerned about something. He's not happy about it.
Right.
He would love for them to be running for 6 yards a carry, but he's also not worried about it, which to me is kind of like you sort of shrug your shoulders and go, "Oh, I guess you're fine." And as we've said, and as you said just then, the RPO is part of the run game. That's an extension of the run game. So if the opponent is bringing all their guys up to the line of scrimmage, I mean, Wisconsin was really wanted to stop the run. Wisconsin had a very good run defense. So Ohio State kind of shrugged and went, okay, Julian Sayin, now the RPO tags on these plays are now live. Pull the ball and throw to Jeremiah Smith for 8 yards, for 9 yards, for 12 yards, for 8 yards. Like, okay, well, you want to lose that way? We can make you lose that way. It's just kind of like okay, whatever you want to do, you tell us, and we will punch you where you would like to be punched. Not in the face. Okay, well, punch you in the gut. That's fine. They're perfectly happy to do that. Ed wants to know, will Arbel Reese be the first pick of the upcoming draft? I would say no. But he's going to get to stand on the stage with Roger Goodell and get a fancy new hat probably a lot earlier than anyone would have guessed.
That is, unless he chooses to stay at Ohio State for maybe a couple $1 million.
I think he's at the point where the number of millions of dollars that some team is going to give him is going to be. But him being a top 10 pick, that.
The other question that you're seeing is, will he be the first Buckeye drafted? And you've got Caleb Downs obviously in there. Carnell Tate continues to make a move. But Arbel Reese is very unique, of course.
Yeah, those 3 guys going in the top 20, I would feel reasonably confident in. Those, any of those guys going in the top 5, probably not, because those are not positions where you typically see guys go in the top 5. If Julian Sayin going in the top 5, yeah, we can have that conversation for the 2027 NFL draft. Arbel Reese, if teams look at him as an edge rusher, I guess maybe, I don't know, where did Abdul Carter go last year?
5 or something.
5. Okay, I mean, if you look at him as an Abdul Carter, maybe he's in that range. It just depends on who's draft. This is not a good quarterback draft. We just talked about the fact that it's hard to evaluate the quarterback position. I will say that with a high degree of certainty, this is not a great or deep quarterback draft. You might get one that's like, oh, that's pretty good. Who's that going to be? Oh, but it's not a great quarterback draft. So I think you are going to see some guys, and Caleb Downs is such a unique skill set, and Carnell Tate has really shown what he can do, and Arbel Reese has really come on strong. I think you're going to see those 3 guys, certainly all first-round picks, probably top 15, 20-ish picks, probably not number 1 overall. Doug says someone at Penn State put the Hartline rumors into the ether to create a distraction for Hartline and the players. I don't think that has created any kind of distraction.
No, it's just distracting the fans, I think, and if that's all you can accomplish, then no worries there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Tyler says this is just another example of a great lesson we should all know by now, never to assume things, and that's true of a lot of things that we've talked about on this. Going through here, Todd wants to know if we were the offensive line coach, who are you going with at right guard?
Well, they've got all of the information. It's not like they're making, the wrong choice. I don't.
Yeah, they're watching. They've spent the last 2 weeks watching practice, and it sounds, based on what Ryan Day has said, like Taker Chabot is going to still be the guy, and they're going to continue to rotate Josh Padilla in. I think there's a lot of people who are looking at the Wisconsin game and going, Padilla can't be worse than that. They're watching practice. They are seeing a bunch of stuff that you aren't seeing, that we aren't seeing, and there's they are even more heavily incentivized to get the best results as possible than you are or anyone else is. And it sounds, I mean, we'll see. Sometimes we get told one thing and then something else happens. They will show you today. Like, don't listen to what they're telling you. Watch what they're showing you. My expectation based on what they told us is that Taker Chabot is going to continue to be the right guard, based on what they've seen in practice the last couple of weeks. So I kind of shrug my shoulders and go, okay.
Well, your play can keep you on the field, as we saw with Lyd Montgomery in the playoffs last year. If you are impossible to remove from the field because you're playing so well, then the rotation ends. But the funny thing is, PFF, I think, had Josh Padilla as the highest rated offensive lineman in the last game. Of course, PFF
Gestures vaguely,
nods
yes.
and all of that. So I think that has also fed into this. But yeah, it's easy to see the bad plays that Tigger Chabot has made, and those get pointed out. And then I think with offensive linemen, when you're looking for them, you're going to find them, and then you're just like you're really focused on that. But I promise you, like if you just look for like focus on anybody, you're going to find some negatives. It's like there's 4 bad plays in that game.
Mhm.
You got to bench this guy. It's like, well, there are 62 plays.
Right. Yeah.
So, but like they've got all of the information they need to make the correct decision. Coaches are not infallible, but they're also not out there trying to put the wrong guys on the field.
Right. And if you are aware of the issue, they are also aware of the issue. And they are, as I said, much more incentivized to make the correct decision. So if they feel that's the correct decision, you don't have the information to necessarily overrule them on that. Doug Shepard says 150 plus people haven't hit the thumbs up yet. Yes, you should do that. That helps other folks find these shows. That helps you find these videos in the future, all that kind of stuff. So do please take a second to hit the thumbs up. Also, make sure you are subscribed to our channel because we will have my post-game show and then, of course, lots of other stuff coming up over the next several weeks. It's going to be a busy month. Can't believe it's already November. It is the Michigan countdown we do on the morning show every year. It starts at 360 whatever days, and it's like, boy, I can now do the countdown myself without even having to think about it. It's going to be 27 days tomorrow. It is 4 weeks from right this moment. We are going to be sitting in Michigan Stadium.
So it's the last month of the regular season and maybe the first of 3 months of football ahead of Ohio State.
Or it's entirely possible. You saw Oregon kind of go, well, we might be playing till January 20th, and their season was over in the middle of the second quarter on New Year's Day. So, not as Tyler said earlier, nothing is guaranteed. So, enjoy it while you're and make the most of it. Big John says, is it fair to say that Julian Sayin is the perfect quarterback for Ryan Day's system?
I mean, there have been several perfect quarterbacks for Ryan Day's system. And, I don't know that Will Howard was one of them, but he won a national championship. I know last year when it was Will Howard being the guy that they signed, and it's like, that's all they could get. Like, this is the guy. And he goes out and sets a school record for a number of 80% completion games. You watch Justin Fields and the way that the Buckeyes were able to run the ball with him. You're leading the Big Ten in rushing his 2 years by a lot, 250, 260 yards a game, and yet also being able to throw the ball all over the place with those receivers. That seemed like the perfect quarterback. C.J. Stroud is maybe the best quarterback in Ohio State history. Like he looked pretty good. Dwayne Haskins throwing all over the place in Ryan Day's second year as offensive coordinator. And then Julian Sayin doing what he's doing now, which is also pretty darn ridiculous. I went through and looked. So he's got, I forget the exact stat that I did last night, but it's, Tom, you'd have to go look at my Twitter page. But
I don't think I follow you.
He's doing something right now that has not maybe ever been done since the pass became in vogue in 30-some years, Tom, as you're scrolling desperately through my very quality bunches of tweets.
Joe Carter singing the seventh inning
No.
stretch? No.
Keep going. Boy, a lot of trash there. There you
Julian Sayin has yet to throw double-digit incompletions in a game this year. He's the first Buckeye starting quarterback to do that through 7 starts in 30-plus years.
And then eventually you'll just get to the point where somebody doesn't do it because
they're only throwing 9 passes a game.
Exactly. But, I went back and that's all Bobby Hoying, that's Joe Germain, that's, Stanley Jackson, C.J. Stroud, way back. So I think that's just an interesting stat that tells you that he continues to do well. And I've thrown some videos up of the one incompletion he's had on 3rd and long this year, 3rd and 7 or more, was the second drop of the season by Jeremiah Smith on a screen. He's 17 of 18 on 3rd and 7 or longer this season. So it's stuff like that is crazy.
I saw you last night posting, here's every incompletion he's thrown in these different scenarios. Man, what a hater he is. Just always emphasizing the negative, that Tony.
One incompletion from inside his own 20.
And that takes me back to...
And that was the the throw against Texas to Max Player where Max Player was out blocking. So
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
even these incompletions shouldn't necessarily be incompletions.
Yeah, that takes me back to, was it the Washington week where Brian Day was talking about watching Washington's punt reel is like, didn't take long. There was like 2 of them.
Yeah.
Like watching some of these Julian saying, here's what you're doing wrong reels does not take long. IGPN says, do you think Terry Smith was strategic or unsophisticated with his comments this week with sharing so many details regarding the game plan? It's a great question.
Feature, not a bug.
Yeah, he is someone who has not had to do the head coach media role a lot. I think there's probably, James Franklin called him, the ultimate truth teller earlier this season. And that was something he was asked about. He said, yeah, he's going to be like very statement of fact. And he is probably going to sort of put stuff out there that you wouldn't necessarily like. James Franklin never shared injury information. Terry Smith is just sort of like, oh, yeah, here's what's going on here. Yeah, he may go. Yeah, he'll be good. He's not going to. That's not a normal thing. I do think I think you may get surprised more by Penn State's defense. I think we're all assuming that we know what Jim Knowles is going to do on defense, and you're going to see a bunch of cover zero, and they're going to be really aggressive. It wouldn't shock me if it was, nope, not at all. Completely the opposite of that. On offense, I do think they're going to have to throw the ball. Because frankly, they're going to have to throw the ball. They're going to have to throw the ball downfield. If they don't throw the ball downfield and stretch the field a little bit, Ohio State's just going to go, all right, we'll play a heavy box and we'll trust the corners to win their one-on-one matchups, and you can go ahead and try and run into 8 guys in the box, but that's probably not going to go great, and then you are going to have to throw downfield one way or the other.
And the defense for Penn State has had 2 weeks to get ready for this and maybe change some things up if they need to in order to maybe slow down the Ohio State offense for the first. Yeah.
Doug Shepard says, over 200 people need to like the video. Come on, people, it's free. Strong agree. Ryan wants to know, did we get the availability report yet? Sorry if we missed it. That is not out yet. That will come out at 10 o'clock. I have no indication that there's anything consequential that's going to be on there. We may hang out here and stick around till 10 o'clock just to be able to get you that officially, but I am not expecting anything consequential on the Ohio State's end of things.
Lorenzo Styles is expected to be back.
Yes. Doug Shepard says, 3-peat incoming, write it down one at a time. They're on a 1-peat right now, and there's I know it's November, and it's like, boy, we're already almost at the end of the season. I'm like, well, sort of, but then they need to win 4 more regular season games to ensure that they get the Big Ten championship game. Then they get the Big Ten championship game. Then you got 3 or 4 college football playoff games after that. This is you are 7 games into a season. It's like, wow, the regular season is more than halfway over. The regular season is going to be 2/3 of the way over after today, but also the whole season might be not even half over.
But after this game, the 3-peat will be half over.
Potentially, depending on if they play 17 games in different seasons. The T.T. Foster says, beat Michigan month. All right, yes, it is. Sorry, beat TTUN month. Read it as it says. Scroll through here. Warpog wants to know, will Penn State rush for more than 100 yards today?
Ooh, how many teams have done that? So, yeah, I think, boy, it depends. To me, it depends on how much better Ethan Grunkemeyer is this week than he was 2 weeks ago, because if he's not any better, then they shouldn't. But also limiting this Penn State attack to under 100 yards rushing, I think is asking a lot, because I do think they're gonna run the ball at least 30 times, right? And so that's not a difficult 3.3 yards per carry is not a difficult ask offensively. So I will say, Tom, as I muse on about this, they should, but I'll say no, they should.
So Penn State last week, 46 rushes, 173 yards against Iowa, and Iowa's defense is good. And this is while Penn State is averaging 3.3 yards per attempt throwing the ball. So, yeah, man, can I tell you how much I'm glad I only have to watch that Penn State Iowa game once? So glad, you guys. Kaytron Allen is really good. Now, Kaytron Allen has, over the years, Ohio State has controlled Kaytron Allen phenomenally well. The guy who has controlled Kaytron Allen is now going to be wearing blue and white and sitting in a different booth today. So we'll see how well that carries over. We haven't been able to run against Ohio State this year really very much. But Kaytron Allen's pretty good. And I think sack adjusted, I think they probably get to 100 yards. But, sack adjusted. And some of it's going to depend on if Penn State can throw the ball. If Penn State can't throw the ball, and Ohio State can just sit there and just go, okay, well, all you have is rock, so I'm just going to keep calling paper until you do something else. And it's like, well, my paper and my scissors are broken. Like, well, that's not going to be good news because there was it was a literal rock fight last week, Penn State and Iowa. Neither team could throw the ball. Neither team got to 100 yards throwing the ball last week. What's a bigger question in your mind? Does Penn State get to 100 yards rushing, or does Penn State get to 100 yards passing today?
Passing
is a bigger question.
Yeah, for me. Again, because what we saw last week was, you should know. He was under 100 yards passing. It was his first start. I will say 100 yards rushing is the biggest question. It was just so visceral.
Yeah.
Watching the passing games where it's hard to forget that. But a couple weeks of practice as the number one quarterback, you've got the first start to draw back on. You should be able to throw for Drew Allar like 130 yards, which is what Drew Allar threw against Oregon.
Yeah, and one other thing that may change things is Penn State's third string quarterback, who's now their second string quarterback, Jackson Smolik. You saw him sort of rotating in, and they were kind of running a two quarterback system last week in Iowa City, and it was not great. And Smolik, I don't think, threw a pass, so it was a very predictable running situation. He's banged up. He was injured last week, so that's one question. His status is sort of up in the air for this game. Their quarterback who is behind him is a true freshman. That is, he's available, but that's not what you want. You've got a redshirt freshman who's going to be your starter. Smolik is an Iowa native. You wonder if there was a piece of that last week that was, we're going to let the Iowa kid play at Iowa and show what he can do in front of the home folks. Certainly possible. But my point there is I think Grunkemeyer is taking a higher percentage of the snaps, which means you're throwing the ball on a higher percentage of your snaps today. It's not just going to be try and rock fight Iowa, because Ohio State has scissors, Ohio State has paper, Ohio State can do a bunch of different stuff. It's not just, we just have to score more points than a Kirk Ferentz offense. How hard could it be?
They've got the paper cutter where you 40 pages at a time.
Ed wants to know, will Lorenzo's style start? I guess that kind of depends a little bit on what Penn State comes out in.
Yeah, exactly.
Coming out in 13 personnel, or are they going to come out in 11? If they've got three receivers, then I would expect Lorenzo's style to start. We're about 5 minutes away from being able to get in that availability report.
They'll have both Peyton Pierce and Lorenzo Styles there waiting. Then one or the other will go on based on the number of tight ends, basically, or running backs, because they will play a lot of 21 in there as well.
Warpog wants to know if Penn State can't rush for more than 100 yards in the first three quarters, what is the margin of victory?
I went 31-7, and I feel like that's factoring the lack of a productive running game in there. So I think 24 points is a lot.
Yeah.
Ohio State may only score 24 points. Frankly, the way they are so 24 points is so much now. Ryan Day is perfectly happy with 24 points.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such this is taking some getting used to, frankly, where they would lead the Big Ten in scoring every year, 44, 45 points a game. And now you've got to we don't need the 3 extra touchdowns that we used to get. And you score 24 points and you still win by 2 touchdowns.
Right. You're past the point where style points are the deciding factor. As soon as the playoff field expands, you can just get in by winning your games. So that's one piece. And the other piece is you have potentially 16, 17 games. So you have to maintain, keep your guys healthy, keep your guys well rested. You don't want your guys to just go, now they're playing 16 games instead of 12, so they're going to take an extra 33% of snaps and 33% of hits and everything. They want to spread that out as much as they can, which is why we've talked about the tempo, we've talked about the subbing, we've talked about all that stuff. I think Ryan Day has frequently left the starters in a little longer, like one drive longer than I think frequently it's like the game's out of hand, and it's like one drive longer, but it's not 6 drives longer. I frankly, this is a hobby horse of mine, but I would love to see Lincoln Keenholz in there for one drive with the ones. Get a lead of 4 scores and then get in any game, not just this game. Get a lead of 4 scores, get one drive of Lincoln Keenholz with the ones, and then get the 2s in there.
It's funny because he's okay with a lower margin of victory now, but it's too low to be comfortable enough to put in the backups earlier than too early. So it's kind of a catch-22 that he's dealing with. But yeah, I agree. They can put guys in there earlier, and it's not like it's going to cost them the game, but coaches are so paranoid with that. Like 21-point lead can become a 7-point lead like that. And it's like, well, not really.
But you've seen it. You've seen it with Ohio State and Illinois. The last 2 times that Ohio State and Illinois have played over the span of 2017 through the present, you've kind of had that same thing where Ohio State's up by a bunch, and then Illinois they pull their starters, and then Illinois scores, and then they maybe score again, and then Ohio State goes, and they put their starters back in because then all of a sudden, the Illinois game, one of the things that's holding Ohio State back in some of the advanced statistical metrics, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is it never technically got to garbage time against Illinois. Like, you got to a point where everyone knew Illinois is not coming back to win this game, but you didn't actually cross that threshold into garbage time, which is usually like 28 points. And it was like Ohio State led by 24 or 27, but you didn't get to 28, so it never technically became garbage time. So therefore, Illinois, when they scored a couple second half touchdowns, that counts against Ohio State's advanced stats, but it also just kind of makes it annoying and keep games close. So we're going to get to the availability report at the top of the hour. Before we do that, let's get to score predictions. This one to me is the error bars on this one are so big because it's just which Penn State team shows up, how aggressive are they, and how much does that aggressiveness pay off? Because I look at the Penn State offense, and you're going to throw everything at this game. See if you can pull off a shocker. See if you can keep it competitive for 4 quarters. Throw everything you got at it. This is a talented enough team that they could potentially keep it competitive for 4 quarters. If that stuff works and they can get to 17 points, 20 points, win this football game. If that stuff doesn't work and you're turning the ball over, and Ethan Grunkemeyer is, a second career start redshirt freshman facing a Matt Patricia defense that's been confusing Luke Altmaier and fifth-year guys this year, well, then maybe it could really go pear-shaped for Penn State. So, we both have a score prediction, but in my score prediction, I said this could be a 20-17 game. This could be a 56-0 game. I just kind of throw my hands up and go like, just how well does what does Penn State do? How well do they execute it? And it feels like this is almost more a Penn State controls what this game looks like, much more so than Ohio State.
Yeah, I agree. I could see a 17-10 game with a strong Penn State defense making life miserable for the Ohio State offense. But I also have to go based on what we've seen, and we've seen everybody score in the 20s against Penn State. So if everybody's doing that, then why can't Ohio State score 31, which is what I have? And based on the offense that we saw 2 weeks ago, it's hard to imagine Penn State coming in here and scoring 17 points or more than that. And if they do, then kudos to them for the game plan and the execution and the growth that Ethan Grunkemeyer has shown in the span of 2 weeks. But I'm going to go based off what I've seen, and so that's why I went 31-7, knowing exactly what you said. Like, this is just the sweet spot of the possibilities, basically.
All right. So, and this is one of these great weeks where Tony and I spend the whole week talking and come up with independent score predictions and land on exactly the same number. I also picked 31-7. If this game is 17-7 in the early 4th quarter, I kind of shrug and go, yeah, all right, sure. This could be a 1-score game in the 4th quarter, and I kind of go, yeah, okay. I'm not shocked by that. But also, this game could be 28-0 in the 2nd quarter, and I go, unless Penn State has a 28, I go, yeah, I'm not shocked by that. It's
the only shocking thing would be a Penn State win.
Careful. The last time I said something like that was the 2014 Big Ten championship game, and I said the only outcome that would shock me was a blowout Ohio State win. Anyway,
59-0 Penn State. Is that what you're saying?
yes, that's exactly. Print the T-shirts. So here is the official availability report, just out 10 o'clock a.m. on your Eastern Coast. Here you go. Game out for today. Logan George, defensive end, backup defensive end. Blake Hartford, backup safety. Mason Maggs, quarterback. Quincy Porter, backup wide receiver. Turbo Rogers, running back. Max Roy, defensive lineman, and Ahmed Tunkara, offensive lineman. You know, there's guys there that, Quincy Porter especially. I look at Quincy Porter and thought, against Wisconsin, I thought, you're probably going to see more of him. We'll see if this is a 1 week thing or a long-term thing. Hopefully it's just a 1 week thing, because he felt like he was on track to maybe take on a bigger role. So, no starters there, but guys who potentially could have played in this game.
And Bryson Rogers is back.
Yes.
We saw Carnell Tate and even Mylan Graham working in the slot last week, along with Brandon Innes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Mylan Graham this week. Does he continue to get his snaps, or do they go away because they're not enough? Like he was mostly working in the slot last week. Not that he was, but like if he's no longer working in the slot, are those snaps now gone to Bryson Rogers, or do they want to get him more involved?
So Mateo and Fuego, I think this is a very realistic possibility. Penn State throwing multiple nothing to lose plays to keep it close. I think that's true potentially on the offensive side of the ball. I think that's true potentially on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's true potentially on special teams. Like, onside kick to open the game. Sure, why not? I mean, really, I think this is a be on your toes game for Ohio State. They won't free face the game. Onside kick in, opening the second half, whichever half Penn State is kicking the ball off, watch for the onside kick. Watch for the fake punt. Watch for the fake field goal. Watch for whatever Andy Kotelnicki draws up. Watch for a bunch of cover zero from Jim Knowles. I mean, you're going to just see whatever, whenever, because this is you remember the 2011 season and Ohio State, completely dead loss season. The win over Wisconsin, where they beat Russell Wilson here with Braxton Miller with the bomb to Devin Smith in the final minute. That was you throw everything at it and you win, and it's sort of, it's a little bit of a redeeming feature in that season. They almost did the same thing to Michigan, where just a little bit overthrown on that same basic thing in the final minute. This is a little bit of a redeem your season kind of game for Penn State. So sure, you're going to throw everything you got at it.
100%. This is the game that they're always defined by. So why just let something happen?
Ryan Dawes says, does the home crowd bring some extra juice today for some false starts?
I don't think so. I'm not expecting a huge crowd interrupting kind of game when the crowd is asked to wear black and all I see are complaints.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, just asking to wear black. Like,
right? Yeah. Is
this the attitude you're going to bring to this game? You're just going to boo the wardrobe requirements. Does this feel like a Penn State game?
No, this has not had the feel of a big game week in Columbus. All year I thought, oh man, that's going to be a great week, and you're going to start November with that. We came into the season looking and saying you got 5 or 6 losable games on the schedule. And, certainly Texas was one, certainly Michigan's one, certainly Penn State is one, and then, Illinois and Washington and maybe Wisconsin. You're through 4 of those unbeaten. This one, you're favored by 3 touchdowns in. And it's just, I don't think Ohio State fans are quite in survival mode, maybe is a good way to put it. They haven't had a close game yet. So you haven't had that, boy, we've really got to, maybe, but it's a noon game. It's not the game that you expected it to be. So yeah, I'm expecting a, interested crowd, involved crowd, but not a, this is not going to be a whiteout level intensity crowd, right, because it's noon and not prime time, and Penn State's not holding up their end of the bargain.
The game day operations are going to try to make this a loud crowd, though, so they're going to do their job.
Yep. So there you go. You have that to look forward to. Camp between the first and the second quarter. Lots of and Urban Meyer doing the pregame victory bell ringing today. So that will probably get the crowd a little juiced up as well. So we'll be back after the game to talk about all this. at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle with our live post-game show. And, of course, all the coverage you come to know and expect all week long. We appreciate you guys joining us. Make sure, again, if you hit the thumbs up, we would really appreciate that. Help other folks find these shows. That'll do it for now. We will see you guys after the game.